Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Donald Trump was in Ohio over the weekend. Kind of the same old, boring, tired. It's like a comedian who has, like one good joke, and that's all he's got. And every time you go see him, he tells the same joke, and you could tell it better than he does. I mean, that's kind of what Trump was over the weekend. I could have done his victim tour much better with much more energy than he had. But the sad reality is he needs to work on some new material. Has to have new material. But here's the thing. He looks like the sore loser that we always knew he was. But the good thing is I think maybe the base, even the Q kooks were going, same old, same old. He needs new material. Even they're getting it. So maybe hope. But here's the thing. The one thing that he has done with his whole shtick is convinced a whole bunch of people that there's something wrong with our voting system and that we need radical changes. The kind of insanity we see going on in Georgia, the kind of horrible roadblocks to people getting to vote that they've done there and in other places. And that legislation is everywhere. And I'm so happy to see the Department of Justice going after Georgia. And here to share some thoughts on what's going on in the state of Georgia. I have asked Sarah Riggs Amico to come talk with us. Sarah's a former senatorial candidate there in Georgia. She's also the founder of the Our American Dream PAC, OurAmericanDreamsPAC.com, the website. We'll get links out. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, it's good to be back. I always love a chance to talk with you, Rick.
So Donald Trump, same old shtick, kind of, and actually not even entertaining now.
Yeah, in fact, I would argue it's kind of sad. In fact, it's very beneath the office of the presidency. And, it still may be better for him than what's coming. He may well be incarcerated in the future. So it's a sad thing to see. But if you think about it, voting rights is probably one of the few areas left in this country that shouldn't be partisan. Free and fair elections, accurate tabulation of the votes. These are not partisan issues. These are very much the foundation of our ability to self-govern, of our democratic republic. And to watch the Donald Trump Republican Party make a mockery of those rights has been one of the greatest disappointments of the last 6 years, really.
Yeah. I mean, you had Al Gore come out and have a statement today that made its rounds on Twitter and in social media. And while very tan and must be spending a lot of time on the beach, he's right. It's time for Trump to, and it's never going to happen, but to admit that, hey, it's time to move along, heal the country, do all that stuff. Now, again, I know that's never going to happen.
No, we're not going to see that from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has had all manner of opportunities to correct the big lie, to admit that he fair and square lost the 2020 election. He has had many opportunities to do the right thing over the course of his career. And we've seen time and again, he doesn't want to, whether that was wearing a mask at the beginning of the pandemic to encourage us to protect one another and save lives in our community, or whether it was admitting defeat and doing the honorable thing for our democracy. This is a president who wouldn't even bother to show up to welcome the new president and first lady into the White House, to attend the inauguration. This is a president who never saw the presidency as about us, the people of this country, but rather as a means to an end for him. It was a very selfish presidency, and it's not at all a surprise to see him continue in that selfish manner as a former president.
No, you are so spot on, which is why I'm glad Joe Biden is our president right now, because he is the antithesis of what the former guy was. And look, while Biden wasn't my first choice, I do think he was the right choice, because he has shown up. He's come to work every day. He's doing his job. He's getting things turned around. Like I said, he wasn't my first choice, but I think he was the right choice.
He's delivering on everything he told us. And here in Georgia, we delivered our 16 electoral votes for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Really, for the first time since Bill Clinton's election, the state was won by Democrats. we have a lot to be proud of. We put John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock in the U.S. Senate and gave Joe Biden a Democratic Senate majority to work with to pass this ambitious agenda, to get the American Rescue Plan through, to get much needed help to working people across this country. Joe Biden has delivered. And not only that, I think he's shown a tremendous amount of humility and ability to listen to people, even people that don't necessarily disagree with him, whether that's on the right or the left. And as a result, we've seen an infrastructure package, bipartisan compromise in the last week. We've seen the rescue plan, and we see really a vaccination campaign that took this country from zero to hero in the pandemic. We were the laughing stock of the world under Donald Trump's mismanagement of the coronavirus pandemic. And we're now approaching 2/3 of adults in this country being vaccinated. The Biden-Harris administration gets a tremendous amount of credit for that. And I couldn't be prouder that we gave our votes to help push him into the White House here in Georgia. So, I think what we're seeing in Georgia is the backlash now of that the Republicans continue in many corners to talk about the big lie, to refuse to admit that Joe Biden won this election fair and square. And we've seen as a backlash to that in our state legislature, one of the most draconian restrictions on voting rights, access to the ballot box, particularly for Black and Brown communities, particularly in rural communities, and particularly for poor communities, with the passage of SB 202, this draconian voter suppression bill that we saw this year. So yes, Merrick Garland, our Attorney General, has now announced he's suing the state. And once again, I think the Biden-Harris administration is doing exactly what they promised, which is protecting the constitutional rights of Georgians and Americans across this country.
Yeah, I mean, in looking at Garland going after and the DOJ going after Georgia, I've had some people say, well, he's not going after enough. He's not doing enough right away. And he's not going after the difficult stuff. I'm going, no, he's going after what they're doing in Georgia. And whatever we get, that's the start. Because at the end of the day, I think we need to go back to pre-clearance. I don't think Georgia or many of the other states have the ability to not do exactly what your state has done.
Yeah, in fact, there are two things I think your listeners should really be watching for on the voting rights front, both with the decision that's currently before the Supreme Court and with the DOJ lawsuit against the state of Georgia for SB 202. On the SB 202 side, look, Georgia Republicans have now criminalized handing a bottle of water to a thirsty person waiting in line to vote. They've restricted access to drop boxes. They have restricted the amount of extra time our metropolitan areas can add to voting hours. And for working people, again, that's a tremendous challenge. And statistically, the data is all very clear that this disproportionately limits access to the ballot box for Black and Brown or other traditionally marginalized voter communities. So we need to watch in that. And as you said, if we had restored Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, if we had pre-clearance so that you couldn't make these changes that will disproportionately impact minority voters without a federal pre-approval, this wouldn't have happened. So I'd love to see Section 5 put back into place. I'd love to see pre-clearance across the country. Let's be honest. Discrimination exists in every corner of this nation, not just in the South. But on the Supreme Court front, I do think let's not take our eye off the ball there. The concern is whether there will be a dramatic reimagining of Section 2 in terms of what constitutes something that disproportionately impacts minority voters. And that could be absolutely devastating for voting rights as well. So there are really kind of the dueling dragons right now as we take on the next phase of voting and civil rights in this country. And I'd encourage everybody to be calling their legislators. Speak up. This is not a time to be quiet. History will remember the people who sat quietly by in the face of this tremendous injustice on voting rights.
What do you say, Sarah, to the person who goes, well, these are the rules. They've set the rules. All you now have to do is go out and get people to play by those rules. So instead of suing, instead of carrying on and getting all upset, go out, organize them, get them the things they need, and get them to the polls and play within the confines that they've set. What's the argument against that?
Look, the presumption in that statement, Rick, is that the rules make it right. And that's just not true. I live in Georgia, what used to be the Jim Crow South, where our lunch counters were segregated by race. Just because something is the rule doesn't mean it is the correct rule. And having these kinds of voter restrictions, look, we can all have reasonable disagreement around what kind of voter ID might be required to vote, around whether or not to count provisional ballots if they're cast in the wrong precinct. There are plenty of places to talk about how to have free and fair and secure elections. What there isn't a place for in American democracy is a place that minimizes the access Black and brown folks have to the ballot box. When somebody has better access, when somebody in a predominantly white community waits in line for 20 minutes to vote every single time you go to the ballot box, like you do in some of the predominantly white areas here in Georgia, and if you go to predominantly Black and brown communities, you're waiting 2-3 hours, in some cases 6, 7, 8 hours, that is not okay. That is, just because it's the rule does not mean it's okay. In fact, it's one of the greatest injustices. And look, Georgians will still turn out. I want to be clear. We showed our stuff last November. We showed up, we organized. A new report out today showed that 44,000 of the Georgians, the Secretary of State, had purged from our voter rolls before the 2020 election, re-registered, and cast their ballot in that election. And that is the direct result of these on-the-ground voting rights organizations and organizers, community activists who've been doing this work for years, whether that's labor unions or places like the New Georgia Project and Fair Fight Action. We have got incredible activists and volunteers on the ground, and they'll continue to do that work. But in the background, the rest of us are also going to continue to say this isn't right. We're going to continue to cheer on the DOJ's decision. Folks are going to continue to file amicus briefs where relevant to support. We see the Senate Rules Committee now coming down here for field hearings in Georgia for the first time, I think, in 3 decades. So, we've got to all speak up. This is a pivotal moment. The failure to pass the For the People Act, S1, HR1 in the federal legislature is a real tragedy of democracy. And Mitch McConnell will eventually have to be held to account, whether that's in this life, in the political life, or in the great hereafter. But the reality is, Republicans in the U.S. Senate didn't just shut down this S1, the For the People Act. They shut down the ability to even debate the bill on its merits. They weren't scared of this bill. They were scared of having to stand up for a patently anti-democratic position the party has staked out. And to Republicans out there who might hear this, this is not a place where we can agree to disagree. There is a right side of history, and the people who do not move to it will be remembered with all of the ire and disdain they deserve.
No, I'm glad you brought up the people re-registering, because Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, gets a lot of credit because he didn't go in the couch cushions looking for 12,000 votes, because he had already purged a couple 100,000 before. He did his foolhardy best to rig the election before the first vote was even cast. So he did his job to steal Georgia. It just wasn't enough.
Yeah, 2 things. Number one, I am glad that he said that Joe Biden fairly won this election. There's no contest. But let's be clear, that's not a magnificently brave thing to do. All that is following the law and the oath he swore to uphold when he took that office, which was to abide by the election laws, federal, state, local. This is a man who I know faced a tremendous amount of pressure, and I'm certainly sympathetic to that. But look, at Rick, in my world, I think it's the same in yours. We don't give high praise for doing the job we've agreed to do. That doesn't count as extraordinary courage. That's what we call getting the job done. So the fact that he followed the law, I'm grateful. But we've got to stop, especially in the press, we've got to stop lionizing these people who have simply done their job or simply refuse to break the law. That's not the standard that makes a great public servant. A great public servant is somebody who can speak up before there's a problem, is a great public servant who will tell his own party years ago, we shouldn't be purging people simply because they didn't vote in a couple of elections. That's a great public servant. Lionize those people, call those people courageous. And those people are not Brad Raffensperger. They're not people like our lieutenant governor here in Georgia. I mean, the reality is he's being praised across the board, these guys, both of them, because they've simply said the truth which is that Donald Trump lost. And I'll also point out most of these newfound Republicans, they're people who waited until after Donald Trump lost to find Donald Trump's lies offensive, his anti-democratic tendencies offensive. We got to stop giving these guys a platform like they're heroes. They followed the law, and that's commendable. But let's be clear, it's also what is legally required of their job.
Yep. They simply did their job. But even under the pressure of Trump, there's still some who are saying, no, they're heroes. No, they did their job. You're right. But I'm happy to see Garland going after Georgia, doing something. I know this will end up before the Supreme Court, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do at pre-clearance, because they did leave it in the last case that they could revisit it. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask about your Our American Dreams PAC. You guys got a big fundraiser coming up. Tell me about that. Tell me what you guys do.
Yes, sir. So Our American Dreams PAC, we started to support progressive women running specifically for state and local office here in Georgia. So if you want to change these dynamics, if you want to cut out the nonsense on the gerrymandering Republicans, we're a great place to support. And Wednesday, June 30th is our end of quarter. It is a huge deadline for us, and it's been a tough season. Georgia donors have had a long year with the Senate runoff, so we could use every grassroots contribution we can get. And if you like what you've heard tonight about having a Secretary of State who can do more than simply not break the law, we're very proud to last week endorse State Representative Bee Wynn to be Georgia's next Secretary of State. She is an IBEW member. She is a state legislator who was part of shutting down some of the big lie shenanigans and committee hearings last year. And she would be the first AAPI statewide elected official in the history of Georgia. She is a daughter of Vietnamese refugees. She is an extraordinary human being, and we are very proud to support her. And we look forward to more announcements in the coming months.
Yeah, at the end of the day, all of this stuff comes back to politics. I have friends who say, "Oh, I'm tired of politics." Everything comes back down to the political arena. And as my high school government teacher said, government decides who gets what. Sad reality is the working class of this country, the working class majority of this country, has been getting the short end of the stick for far too long, because we have far too few of us in the halls of power.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, whether or not you want to be involved in politics, politics is involved in you, right? They're setting the rules of the game. And if you want a fairer, more just, more equitable society, engage. Cast your ballot. Don't give up hope. Don't give in to the kind of jaded perspective that all candidates are the same. They're not.
Yep.
And Donald Trump has shown us that more than anyone.
Absolutely.
We have got to get people with integrity in office.
The website, OurAmericanDreamsPAC.com. We'll get links out on social media. Sarah, I appreciate you taking some time for us.
It's good to be back with you. Thanks again.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Sarah Riggs Amico. Make sure you check out the website, OurAmericanDreamsPAC.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.